Welcome, true believers, to another episode of Nerd Herders First Impressions. I am Stan Lee, and I'm here with Travis, Sam, and Abby to talk about my greatest creation, Spider-Man. All right, Stan Lee, thanks for signing us in there.
Wow.
We'll catch you later.
Such an honor.
Excelsior!
See you later, buddy.
Yeah.
We can go grab drinks later? Question mark.
As our good old Uncle Stan has said, we're here to talk to you about the new PS4 Spider-Man game,
Yes.
which just came out Friday, September 7th. If you haven't had the chance to check it out, make your way, run, don't walk, to your nearest video game establishment. Pick up a copy. You won't regret it. For those of you that have not played the game, there are going to be several spoilers in this discussion. And then, full disclaimer, I have not completed the game. I've only played through a chunk of it.
That's why this is a first impression.
Exactly.
And not a recap.
So, just for people who are starting out the game, you're gonna hear some things that are gonna spoil the introduction for you. Before we actually sat down and started playing the game, we wanted a basis of comparison. So we booted up the old PS2 and played the Spider-Man 2 PS2 game, which up to this point has kind of been like the gold standard of Spider-Man games.
Been hailed as the best Spider-Man.
Yes.
To the swinging mechanics.
The web swinging mechanics. I would say that the story, even though it's based off of the movie Spider-Man 2, is still much more interesting than a bulk of the Spider-Man games that have been out. It wasn't overcomplicated, and there was just enough originality in it that you didn't feel like you're getting nothing but the same story as the movie.
Yeah. An actual Tobey Maguire.
Actual Tobey Maguire. Now,
sad, tired sounding Tobey Maguire for most.
Yeah. So the first big difference between like the new Spider-Man game and all the previous titles is that Spider-Man PS4, Peter Parker himself plays a huge role in it. It's not exclusively a Spider-Man story. Peter has his own like life that kind of intersects a lot with his career as a superhero. And it's very refreshing to have that little break that you can take in between the web swinging and the crime fighting, where you can just like hang out in a laboratory with Dr. Otto Octavius.
Which you had this great gasp.
Oh my god,
when you're
I
like,
freaked
what?
out. I was so excited. There's so many little references and Easter eggs.
Even in just the very beginning cutscene, you're just like, oh, whatever comic it was.
When they're panning across his bookshelf, you can see it like hidden in the shadows, an issue of Amazing Fantasy 15, which was Spider-Man's first appearance, and it's like, I see what you did there. And it's just like, oh man, there's so many references, like, and seeing that Peter Parker kind of indulges himself in the Spider-Man fan craze. He's wearing Spider-Man boxers in that first shot of him, and it's just like, oh my god.
It's good.
It was
good
so
stuff.
funny.
But yeah, so there's that sort of duality of like when you are Spider-Man and also just being Peter Parker like himself.
Yes. And like there've already been so many reviews by like GameSpot, Games Radar, IGN did a really good one. Shout out to Mark who's working there right now. And just like the fan reviews that you see when people are just like posting their little 2 cents on Twitter and things like that. I love hearing how excited people are and seeing that pretty much anyone who's a fan of Spider-Man is in love with the game. It's so good, and it's so faithful to the character and the story in so many ways.
Which is what you want when you're a big fan of a superhero. You want it to do justice to that superhero. So the fact that this game seems to be like hitting those marks for people is like really exciting.
Yeah.
Let alone like have it be an actual good game, not just like a good representation of the character that's beloved, you know?
But kind of drawing those comparisons between the Spider-Man 2 game, which up to this point has kind of been hailed as perfection. Well, not perfection, but relative perfection.
Nostalgic perfection.
Nostalgic perfection, yes. And then this new incarnation, which everyone's just so excited about and loving so far. The one thing that I've experienced that I really enjoy is the actual crime fighting. Like you feel so much like you're actually Spider-Man, because like the big thing everyone was worried about, everyone was excited about, was the city traversal, web swinging, web zipping, crawling on the walls, just running around in general.
Exactly.
Interacting with your environment. Like this game does it so well. Like it's all physics based. There's no like web lines attached to the open air. Everything has to connect to a building or something nearby. which is great.
Which is good. And the environment itself is built for that.
Yes.
Rather than being, we discussed a little bit about how Spider-Man 2, it felt like really weirdly claustrophobic, and the buildings were strange, and the streets were empty, and it felt like weird to be the superhero for the city, and the city is not super great. But in this game, it totally changes, so the mechanics go well with the environment that you're working with.
Like in Spider-Man 2, it's doable, it's usable, it worked for what it was, but I think it just kind of, the game was hindered by the time that it was developed in.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you look at games like the older like Ezio Assassin's Creeds, where they literally took blueprints of these well-known actual cities and used them as kind of a foundation for building the in-game environment. It's such a trip what they're capable of replicating. And like Insomniac Games said, like, this is not a photorealistic 100% accurate New York, but they put in the major landmarks. They've got Empire State. They've got the Chrysler Building.
They got the big lady.
They got the big lady. America's big lady.
They had big lady in Spider-Man 2. They have big lady in this one.
Statue of Libraries.
Love it.
But then they also turned it into like a Marvel New York.
Yeah.
They've incorporated Avengers Tower.
So they have Doctor Strange, his Sanctum Sanctorum in Greenwich Village.
It's
which
just,
I was like, take me there.
Yeah,
The instant you told me that it was in this game.
It's just there's so much about this game. Like it's so rich in detail and Easter eggs, and it's just one of those things where I could see myself playing this for hours and hours and hours, just for a period of time, and learning new things every single time I play it, noticing details I didn't before. And I think the other big thing for me that really sells the look and feel of the game is the lighting. The way that light plays with the environment, the vehicles, the buildings, windows, and things that like reflect it.
I noticed that too whenever it would become like sunset and things. I was like, oh my goodness, this game is gorgeous. Is when I noticed it. Like the transition from daytime to nighttime. It's like it plays with the environment rather than just like, you know, like you dim the lighting on something like other older games. It's like, it's gorgeous. It's so pretty.
And like I guess the argument could be made for older games, especially Spider-Man 2. Like it's kind of cartoony. You know, when it's nighttime, it's not, you don't get those like dark, deep hues of blue and whatnot. It's like the sky is straight up purple.
Yeah.
You know. And it's like it achieved what it needed to for the time. You got it, but it just, seeing the advancement in technology, like what we're capable of replicating nowadays, is amazing, and it excites me for what the future holds for the games, especially because like I personally have always loved licensed games that are based on like superhero movies and stories and things like that. And it just, over the last decade, we've seen a serious like lapse in those because they weren't always good. They got poor reviews and they didn't make a whole lot of money. But seeing that Insomniac Games could come in and make something that's so well crafted and well received, like, yeah, it's not based on a specific story, it's not based on a specific film, but it's establishing what could be kind of a leaping point for future games that tie into this same Marvel video game world.
I feel like because it is such like a well-known and well-beloved like character and license and things, people would often sort of take that, know that a lot of people love it, and then they can make money off of it, and so if they kind of like do bare minimum, or they don't, I don't know, they don't put nearly as much effort and heart into it, they'll still get money. Like, sure, they might get poor reviews eventually, but people are still going to pre-order it because it's Spider-Man, and people are still going to want to buy it and want to play it because it's Spider-Man. But this one, it feels like it just has so much like heart put into it.
Yeah, it's more than just like a Spider-Man game. It's just a good game.
Exactly.
Something else I want to talk about is combat. You know, for the last several years, there's always like kind of Arkham Asylum established what nowadays is kind of the formula for successful in-game combat.
It's the typical, especially for superhero game.
yeah. Which, I mean, playing through Spider-Man 2, I never really thought about it, but like they really kind of started that even earlier with the whole like Spider Sense thing, where it kind of alerts you someone's going to shoot you or someone's going to swing at you, so hit this button to dodge it. Yeah,
we talked about that when you were actually playing through like Spider-Man 2. You're like, this game did it first, although the other games did it better, or like not necessarily first, but it was like before the time where it was popular.
Everyone uses the comparison of Arkham Asylum, the whole Arkham trilogy, but it's like this thing was a functioning game mechanic prior to the Arkham games, but I would say that Arkham had the most refined and successful version of that kind of combat interaction. And then this new game really kind of pulls it together in a way that, yeah, you see the parallels, you see the inspiration, but it feels very much like Spider-Man's own fighting style. When you're dodging, you're not just like twisting out of the way, and if someone's behind you, you're not just reaching around, grabbing their fist and throwing them like Batman does. You're jumping out of the way of bullets. You're doing like a weird web slide where you go underneath a dude between his legs. You're going over his shoulders. It's very much Spider-Man's own style.
Absolutely. And it's not just during fighting too. There was like this sort of a stealth mission where you're up in the rafters, and you like, rather than like drop on them and like punch them or like knock them unconscious, you bring them up with your webs, like slam their face and then like wrap them in a little web cocoon. And he's like, oh, they always look so cozy, and I'm like, that's Spider-Man. Like, that's what we do.
And it's like, and that stuff is straight out of the comics. You read any Spider-Man comic where he's stopping but they never show like, how does he do it. It's just kind of like one panel they're robbing the bank, the next panel they're hanging upside down with a note attached to them, or like courtesy of your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. So in this one they show he's got that like impact webbing that will like blast them against the wall and stick them there. They show that he knocks them unconscious before tying them in those webs and leaving them.
Yeah, exactly.
The one thing that I think kind of harkens back to the Arkham games, but again works very much in the Spider-Man style, is like he'll shoot down a web splat and they'll be like, what was that? And when they go investigate it, then he webs them up and whatnot. And like, you know, again, Arkham inspired, sure, but a Spider-Man take on it. In a way that doesn't feel like it's so much ripping off of Arkham, but it is how Spider-Man would be doing it.
Yeah, it's familiar without having been like, well, I've done this before with like Arkham.
And then as far as like the style of combat, your punches and kicks and things like that, I know that when they did the Amazing Spider-Man games, something they were going for, because of the one scene in the first Amazing Spider-Man where he smashes through that roof and lands in like a luchador ring, they were like, we want this to be like Mexican wrestling style fighting. And it was evident in that game, but it didn't necessarily feel like Spider-Man. In this game, it's very much like, you know, we know that Peter's been Spider-Man for 8 years. He's picked up a few tricks. He's been like practicing, obviously. And it just feels very much like Spider-Man's own style of combat. And it's so beautifully done. The animations are so gorgeous.
And it's like really fluid as well. Everything works so well. There's no like, or at least from what I saw when you were playing it, there's no like strange like camera issues. You always sort of like know what you're doing, and things go from one thing to another really quickly and really easily, which is good because I hate games where you have to fight with the camera while you're fighting actual villains. That's why I'm bad at games. I can talk about them for hours, but goodness knows I'm so bad at combat.
Yep. So you just used a word that reminded me when I played through like the first 20 minutes the day before you came by, and we played through like a few hours of it.
Yeah.
Like the two words I think best describe the functionality of this game is fluid and dynamic.
Fluid and dynamic.
Yeah, you've got a lot of dynamic motion, a lot of dynamic lighting and structure in it, but everything feels fluid. There's a flow and a rhythm to the game that I think is almost a character in and of itself. You know, and I'm so in love with it and enraptured by it right now. I think that it just feels good.
And the word you use, like just starting off, you're like, it's so cinematic.
Yeah.
Which is another really good word for this game.
Like that whole intro with Peter waking up to his text message and like scrambling to get dressed when he's in his underwear, toast in his mouth. It's literally like a scene out of a movie. And it feels very much like this game could be part of almost like the Marvel Cinematic Universe at one point. There's a lot that was kind of taken, I think, from that film structure that's added into how this game plays out, and it's so good.
Yeah, I also like how the game, there is that like little opening scene where it's like a pan through his bedroom. You sort of like, oh, here's Peter, here's his life, this is what he needs to do, and then you like go out the window and it's like bam, right into the game.
Yep.
Which I like with games, even though like I'm a big story person, so I will sit and watch a 20-minute cutscene and I will remember all of it. But I do like when games kind of just like get you right into the action, and like it gets you right into being Spider-Man, because like he throws on the suit and bam, he's out the window. Like, you're Spider-Man now, go, you have this mission.
Yeah.
Rather than it's like all this dialogue and telling you like exposition. It's like
My
if
uncle
you got a
once said,
yeah.
"With great power,
Yeah.
there must
If
also
you get a
come great
Spider-Man
toast."
game, you know you're playing Spider-Man.
Yeah.
You're ready to play Spider-Man, and it just gets you right into it, and I like that.
Yeah, and I mean, it's from a storytelling perspective. The intro to this is very, very similar, I think, in a lot of respects to like the Uncharted introductions. You've got this kind of slow reveal of like who your character is, what they're about, and then all of a sudden, boom, action.
Yeah.
You know, we're seeing this is where Peter lives. He's a smart guy. His like tech is everywhere. His sketches for web shooters. Like you said, you see his bills and whatnot that are due.
Yeah.
And then he gets the call, and it's like, boom.
Poor sticky boy.
Poor sticky boy. But Abby, I'm so sorry. You've been so quiet.
Oh no, I just don't have a lot to say because I mean
Rambling.
it's no, it's because like I'm not very good at playing video games. I'm not a huge fan of playing them. But like it's like you were saying, like I love to watch the story unfold in like the opening scene. I loved watching the opening scene. I was so excited to see you play it. Just like I am excited to hear like you guys with your conversation here. It's so like, oh, you guys are so passionate. I love it. But like yeah,
I acknowledge I'm like I am also bad at video games. It's just that I love them anyway.
It's so fun to watch it though, because it's just it's so gorgeous, and like you were saying earlier, it's not just like an empty city. Like there's so much going on in it. Like with all like the fire escapes and all that. Like there's so much to play with. It's so much to watch. It's like like looking at beautiful illustrations in a picture book almost.
Yeah.
But
All the
everything's moving.
Well,
And it's like
It's alive.
and something that was so crazy is like you're Spider-Man, so it's like why not just web swing everywhere? But at one point, I just went on the ground and I was just walking around among the people.
Yeah.
And this dude comes up to me and there's like an icon above his head. So I'm like, oh, what's up, buddy? And he's like, hey, I think I saw somebody robbing a bank over there, maybe? You should check it out. And I'm like, oh, yes, crime. Let's do it. And so if I hadn't been walking on the ground, this might not have popped up. I might not have known. So they give you the interaction with your environment as far as like the people that are there, and it makes it feel so much more alive.
yeah.
Because you do have that option. You can just like walk around and be like, hey, buddy.
You
to,
can
like,
wave
other
at people.
Yeah.
When you
can.
try and do like an action, you can't punch civilians, which is awesome. You just, when you hit the punch button, you just like finger guns.
Yeah, I was gonna say he points like, hey.
It's so great.
It's good.
It's just, it's so Spider-Man too. And then you have
It
like the
is.
random guy who's like, Spidey, you're bad news for New York or something like that.
Right.
Like not everybody loves you, but it just, it adds
Which
to
you
it.
also get when you're swinging around. You're listening to J. Jonah Jameson.
Yes, he's got like a podcast.
Yeah, he's like angry old people talk radio is what I think of
Yep.
J. Jonah Jameson. And then like people reference that too, because you can like you're swinging around, you're listening to like his podcast, and he's like, Spider-Man's the worst for the city.
This
and then
dude,
you like talk to
called
somebody.
in and he was like, hey, why'd you give Spidey a break? And J. Jonah was like, why don't you shut up or something ridiculous like
Yeah,
that.
he was like, what are you, a journalist with 12 years of experience like me? And he's like,
Yeah.
no, I'm a plumber. He's like, then go fix my pipes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dang. And
Like-
then later, like, that's kind of referenced in a cutscene where it's like, oh, J. Jonah Jameson's got you all wrong, Spider-Man.
Yeah. Well, I think
"Aw."
it was so funny because at one point, like, we just kind of looked at each other after that, and you were like, I'm willing to bet that JJ voted for Trump. And I was like, oh, God,
J.
yeah.
This is a Trump supporter.
I'm willing to bet. So it's just, oh, man. So
There's a lot of personality in this game, too. Is another,
Yeah.
like, thing is, like, I really like it. That's what makes it stand out to me is there's just so much fun happening. I don't know. Sometimes video games about superheroes can take themselves too serious, get too gritty. But Spider-Man, like, he has all these fun one-liners, and it's like lots of snarky and fun. But then, like, there's still these really intense moments, and I think the game captures that really
For
well.
sure. Like, I love the Arkham trilogy. Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, Arkham Knight. Very, very good games. But like you just said, if they're too gritty, it makes it hard to enjoy them. If it were not for the fact that Joker is such a big part of those games, without that humor, without that comic relief,
It breaks up things in a
it would
good
be
way.
such a grind. It would be an emotional grind, you know? And I mean, I'm all for gravity, like in video games, emotional gravity, but
For
I
sure.
need the levity to balance that out.
It's like a good contrast, I think, for when you do have like these more lighthearted moments, and like you were reminded, oh yeah, I'm playing a video game. Video games are fun,
Yeah.
you know, especially
Yeah.
superhero video games. This is fun for me instead of just like this sort of like you take on this turmoil
Yeah.
of the character and what they're doing.
That actually reminds me of another thing they did that was kind of different that you had asked me about, because when you're Peter Parker in the game,
Yes.
you're like a protege. You're working for Dr. Otto Octavius and Octavius Industries or whatever.
Yeah.
And there's like mini games you can play where you're helping develop his technology and whatnot.
I wouldn't
and
even
you
call
had
them mini
asked-
games. They're more
well,
like little puzzles.
Yeah,
kinda.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you had
In
asked
the
me
lab.
like, are you gonna get tired of this or something like that?
Because you did like a lot in a row, and
Yeah.
I'm like, I know that these are gonna
I
like
cranked
ramp up.
them out.
Yeah, I'm like, I know that these are gonna like ramp up and get more difficult as the
Mhm.
game goes on. You're gonna spend more time doing these probably.
Yep.
So I'm like, do you think that you'll like get tired, or you'll be like, all right, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to get back to doing the other
Yeah.
thing, things like that. That's what I worry about with
And it's
some
like-
things that break up the gameplay like that.
Because it's such an open game, they give you the option to literally just like, you're Peter Parker, you have to find or neglect the balance between your career as a scientist and then your career as Spider-Man and whatnot. And it's like, as a game player, as the person who's manipulating this world and interacting with it, I could be like, you know what? Forget Octavius. I just want to save people and web swing all the time. But I think it's nice to have that opportunity to do something different. You know, just kind of a change of pace is always appreciated in games.
True.
And like what I had told you in that moment was like, nothing is ever going to be as bad as any of the Batmobile related missions in
Yeah,
Arkham Knight.
exactly.
Like,
That's what you said.
I guess really the last big thing that I kind of wanted to talk about was the costume.
The costume.
I love the selection of different costumes that we have. That was something that when they initially announced the game, I was like, please tell me that
Yeah.
they're not going to do away with choosing your costumes.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, yeah, it's purely cosmetic for the most part. I mean, in this game, not so much, because each different outfit gives you different powers that you can, like, equip, like, for every other suit or whatever. They give you a lot of customization for power-ups and gadgets and whatnot. But I'm just a sucker for being able to switch through costumes.
I
You
love
know?
that kind of like character customization. Even if you're playing a superhero that has a standard costume, it's like, you know, in comic books and in movies and things, there are all kinds of different versions of that costume. Give
Oh,
me
yeah.
all of them. Like,
Yep. So it's like, I think the last costume that I unlocked last night was the spider armor, which is a version of Spider-Man's suit that looks very much like Clue from the Tron Legacy movie, where it's all black and has like neon yellow on it. And it's so cool, but it's like, I could take that costume and use the Iron Spider legs as my suit ability for it, which is cool that I can mix and match those.
I
You
also
know?
do like that when you are in a different costume, like the loading screen where it's like Spider-Man in a cool
Yes.
pose, it changes to whatever costume you had been wearing.
And it does that for every cutscene as well.
Yeah, exactly. There was the cutscene like right after you had gotten like the first customization, and then it's like these really cool shots of him like swinging, and then you're
Yeah.
like, yeah, but look at the costume and how it looks in this cutscene. It's so good.
Yeah.
It's like, I love it. It's good stuff.
Like, because I pre-ordered the digital deluxe edition, and with it I got the Iron Spider costume from Avengers Infinity War. And it's like looking at the suit in the selection screen, it's so great, but whenever you get a cutscene and there's a close-up on it, you see the way like the metal segments move when his jaw's moving when he's talking, and you get the close-up where you can see like those nanofibers interweaving. The level of detail that they put into these outfits and into the game overall
Right,
is
I'm
just...
like, props to the animators and things
Dude,
that.
yes, they did not skimp out. The
No.
little bits of his armor that glow on the Iron Spider costume, and even his eyes is
His
just
eyes,
like
and when he's on the wall,
you
you
see the
mentioned that
light
your eyes
glowing
like,
on
yeah,
the wall. It's
really good.
I love this game so much. I'm so excited to dive
You're
into it
hyped.
more. I really am. And I was so worried, like I was getting too excited, I thought. And then Mark had messaged me when he got the game to do the footage capture for, and he's like, look what I'm playing. And after, like, I didn't want to pester him about it because, like, I know it's his job and there's an embargo, he can't talk about it. But
Like, do you like it?
I messaged him at one point and I was like, so, like, what's the word? Am I going to cry when I play this game? And he just texted me back, IDK. And for, like, I
Mark.
know that's like a Mark reaction because
That's so Mark.
he's just playing it very close to the chest. He's a good guy. He does his job well.
Yeah.
But in that moment, for the first time, I was like, oh shit, what if I don't like this game? What if it's a bad game? And it's not.
Right,
So
you can't-
far, it's not at all.
You're like this intense like Spider-Man fan that like
Yeah.
pre-ordered it so ready for this game. He's like, am I gonna like it? Like, do you like
Yeah.
it? Just say yes or no. And he's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
Like,
that's
oh, man.
hilarious to me, but that had to be like Like, oh gosh, what does that mean for you?
It was so funny because right after you left last night, he texted me. He's like, "So, what's the word, Spidey boy?"
Spidey boy.
And I just like in all caps, I was like, "Oh my god, I love the game. I'm having so much fun."
You just said, ah!
Yeah, basically. But man, I love this game. I'm stoked for it. Do you guys have any closing thoughts?
Any closing thoughts about the game?
Yeah.
10 out of 10. Pretty good.
Yeah, I don't have any really closing thoughts. It just looks like a really gorgeous game, and I'd love to play it sometime. So
For sure. Realistically, from what I've already experienced, I will give this game a 9 out of 10.
9 out of 10.
I don't think I could give anything a 10 out of 10 unless, like, for right now, it's a 9 out of 10. When I've played through it, we'll see if I get bored with anything. We'll see if there's anything that happens I'm not crazy about. But for now, it's as close to, like, the Spider-Man game I've been waiting for these last several years as I could have hoped for.
The way that I do, like, number systems, because I'm always hesitant to give anything a 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
But if I think about, like, a game that I really like, and I think about the other games within that, like, genre that I was playing, and how it matches up against them, rather than how it matches up against, like, every game ever, that's sort of how I compare different games. So, like, of all of the superhero-type games, would it be your top, or is there something that beats it so far? I know you've only played a small amount of this one rather than the entire game itself, so it's a loaded question.
That's actually an interesting question. I've played every Arkham game, including the garbage Arkham Origins. I've played both Injustices. I played a little bit of the Incredible Hulk game that came out back in 2008. I played both Iron Man games. I played like the Marvel online MMO. I play the mobile games. I've played PlayStation 1, Spider-Man 1, and then Spider-Man 2. It's like Electro's Revenge or something like that. Oh, Jesus. I actually never played the first Spider-Man movie game when it came out. It came out for like Xbox, GameCube, and I think PS2, but I didn't have a console at that point to play it. So I played Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man 3 on PS2. I played Spider-Man 3 on PS2 and PS3. Spider-Man Web of Shadows on PS3, and I love that game. It was very, very good, very like comic driven. But I hated the voice acting for Spider-Man. It was so bad.
Oh.
It was so bad. I played The Amazing Spider-Mans 1 and 2 on PS3. I played Shattered Dimensions on Xbox 360, which I really loved that game. It was very different, but I enjoyed it a lot. So I played a lot. I played a lot of superhero
Marvel
games.
vs. Capcom. I main Doctor Strange.
There you go.
But so you've played your fair share,
Yeah.
specifically of superhero license type games, and how does this so far?
So far,
match
because I would say that because Spider-Man is my all-time favorite hero,
True.
for right now, I'm going to put it just underneath the Arkham trilogy because I have not experienced the full emotional gravity of the game.
True.
I know that there's a lot more of the story to dive into. There's a lot more like side quests and exploration things to deal with. So for right now, just grazing the bottom of the Arkham games. But I have a feeling that by the end of it all, especially after all the DLC has come out,
Oh, for sure.
because I got the digital deluxe edition, so the DLC I'm gonna have access to.
I know every time that you're like, I wonder if like this will open up, or, and like even if it doesn't open up in this game, like DLC, man, you know.
Yep.
Like.
Yep. I have
So
a
it's
feeling.
just beneath the Arkham.
I have a
games
feeling
for
it's
you.
going to surpass them, just because I love it so much.
I have hope for you.
I have hope
Keep me
for you.
posted.
Absolutely. So, guys, for those of you that have played the game, let me know what your thoughts and feelings are in the comments below. Probably don't have the like 25-30 minutes that I've just kind of unleashed on you all, so you know, a condensed version of that would be rad.
Right.
For those of you looking into playing the game, let me know what you're looking forward to most. If there's anything you didn't like about the game, comment below. We'll have a little discussion about it. I'm always thrilled to prove people wrong. Anyways, yeah, I guess until next time, stay nerdy.